In the 7th chapter of the book of Isaiah, a single ancient word sparked one of the longest and most contentious debates in the history of religion. To Christianity, Isaiah 7:14 is the foundational prophecy of the virgin birth, the miraculous sign that God would enter human history through a virgin mother to bring salvation to the world. To Jewish tradition, this verse has nothing to do with a virgin birth. It was an urgent, immediate military sign given to an 8th century BCE king whose city was under siege. Both traditions read from the exact same prophetic scroll. Both cite ancient manuscript evidence. Neither side is inventing its claims. This documentary is produced strictly for historical, linguistic, and educational investigation. We are not here to judge personal faith or to stage a theological conflict. We are here to place the original Hebrew grammar, the Greek Septuagint translation, and the ancient Near Eastern crisis side by side. Because when you open the ancient manuscripts, the debate is not just about translation. It is about time, context, and the rules of prophetic language. Did Isaiah predict a miracle 700 years in the future? Or did he deliver a military deadline to a terrified king? To find out, we must examine the evidence. To understand why this text divided two faiths, we must first master the forensic linguistic clues. The first clue is the Hebrew word Almah, Almah. In biblical Hebrew lexicography, Almah refers to a young woman of childbearing age who has reached puberty. Across the entire Hebrew Bible, the word appears 7 times, including Genesis 24, Exodus 2, and Proverbs 30. In each case, it describes youth and vitality, but it is not the specific legal term for virginity. The second clue is the Hebrew word Betulah, Betulah. When the Hebrew Bible explicitly requires a legal guarantee of virginity, such as in the marriage laws of Deuteronomy 22 or the priestly regulations of Leviticus 21, it consistently uses Betulah. If the prophet Isaiah intended to emphasize a biologically miraculous conception, why did he choose Almah instead of Betulah? The third clue is the Greek word Parthenos, Parthenos. Around the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, Jewish scholars in Alexandria, Egypt, translated the Hebrew scriptures into Greek, creating the Septuagint. When translating Isaiah 7:14, these ancient Jewish translators rendered the Hebrew Almah with the Greek Parthenos, a word that frequently, though not exclusively, designated a virgin. The final clue is the name Immanuel, Immanuel, meaning God is with us. Was this name intended as a literal, metaphysical declaration of divine incarnation? Or was it a symbolic, theophoric name, reassuring a kingdom in wartime that God had not abandoned them? To answer these questions, we must reconstruct the military emergency that prompted the prophecy. The year is 734 BCE. Jerusalem is gripped by absolute panic. The northern kingdom of Israel, under King Pekah, has formed a military alliance with King Rezin of Damascus. Their combined armies march south to besiege Jerusalem, intending to depose King Ahaz of the house of David and replace him with a puppet ruler known as the son of Tabeel. Isaiah 7:2 describes the terror inside the royal palace. The heart of Ahaz and the heart of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. God commands the prophet Isaiah to confront King Ahaz at the end of the conduit of the upper pool. Isaiah delivers a message of defiance. The siege will fail. The invading kings are merely two smouldering stumps of firebrands. When Ahaz refuses to ask for a confirming sign, Isaiah declares that the Lord himself will give a sign to the royal court. Behold, the young woman, Almah, is pregnant, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel. Then comes the critical military timetable in verses 15 and 16. He shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose two kings you dread will be deserted. Within 2 years of this prophecy, the Assyrian Empire invaded Damascus, executed King Rezin, and shattered the northern coalition. The sign had an immediate, tangible countdown. So how did an 8th century BCE military stopwatch become the announcement of a 1st century virgin birth?
We now enter the formal cross-examination. We will examine the verse across 3 pivotal rounds of debate. Round 1. Who was the sign intended for? The rabbinic Jewish case. The context of Isaiah 7 is locked in the 8th century BCE. King Ahaz was terrified of military annihilation that very month. A miraculous birth occurring 700 years later would offer zero reassurance to a king defending his walls in 734 BCE. Jewish commentators, including Rashi and Radak, argue that the pregnant young woman was already present in the royal court, either Isaiah's wife or Ahaz's queen, and the child was either Isaiah's son or the future righteous king Hezekiah. The Christian typological case. In Isaiah 7:13, the prophet abruptly stops addressing Ahaz as a singular person and addresses the plural House of David. Christian theology argues that while there may have been an initial child born in Isaiah's day, that child was merely an imperfect shadow. The ultimate, everlasting deliverer promised to the house of David was Jesus, whose miraculous conception surpassed all earthly kings. Round 2. Why did Matthew quote the word Parthenos? The Christian case. In Matthew 1:22-23, the Gospel writer cites Isaiah 7:14 from the Greek Septuagint. Behold, the virgin Parthenos shall conceive and bear a son. Matthew was not inventing a novel translation. He was quoting the standard Greek Bible used by Jews throughout the Mediterranean diaspora for 200 years before Jesus was born. Time 1.0. To early Christians, the Septuagint preserved the deeper, divinely intended meaning of the prophecy. See. The Jewish case. Jewish scholars respond that the Greek translation produced in Alexandria was a secondary rendering. In classical Greek, while Parthenos often meant virgin, it could occasionally refer to an unmarried young woman without technical medical precision. When later Greek-speaking Jewish translators in the 2nd century CE, such as Aquila and Symmachus, revised the Greek text, they corrected Parthenos to Neanis, meaning young woman, to reflect the original Hebrew Almah. Round 3. What is the meaning of Immanuel? In Christian theology, Immanuel is an ontological statement, God literally becoming flesh in the incarnation. In Jewish theology, Immanuel is a covenantal slogan. Just like Isaiah's other sons, Shear Jashub, a remnant shall return, and Maher Shalal Hashbaz, spreading to the plunder, Immanuel was a living reminder that God stood with Judah during wartime.
Now, we apply the 6 rigorous pressure tests of scholarly cross-examination. Pressure test 1. The curds and honey timeline. Isaiah 7:16 explicitly ties the child's infancy to the political destruction of Syria and Ephraim within a few years. If the prophecy only refers to Jesus, why does the text anchor the sign to the fall of Damascus in 732 BCE? Christianity must rely on dual fulfillment to explain this near-term clock. Pressure test 2, the Septuagint mystery. If Almah clearly meant an ordinary young woman, why did 70 Jewish translators in Alexandria choose the Greek word Parthenos 2 centuries before Christianity? Judaism must explain why ancient Greek-speaking Jewish sages chose a term associated with virginity. Pressure test 3, the Hezekiah chronology problem. Many medieval rabbinic commentaries suggest Immanuel was King Hezekiah. However, historical chronology in 2 Kings indicates Hezekiah was already around 9 years old when Ahaz ascended the throne. Therefore, Hezekiah could not be a child conceived during the siege of 734 BCE. Pressure test 4, the plural house of David. In verse 13, Isaiah shifts from singular to plural. Hear then, O house of David. This linguistic pivot suggests the sign transcended King Ahaz personally and addressed the eternal destiny of the Davidic dynasty. Pressure test 5, the Hebrew grammatical tense. In Isaiah 7:14, the Hebrew phrase Hine ha-alma hara uses an active participle or adjective. Behold, the young woman is with child. The grammar indicates an ongoing or imminent pregnancy in the 8th century BCE. Pressure test 6, the context of chapter 8. In Isaiah chapter 8, Isaiah conceives a son whose infancy also marks the destruction of Damascus and Samaria. This establishes an immediate literary pattern of prophetic children acting as living timers for military events.
This textual fracture was formally debated in the 2nd century CE. Around 150 CE, the Christian philosopher Justin Martyr recorded his dialogue with Trypho the Jew. It is the earliest surviving record of this debate. Justin argued that Isaiah 7:14 could not apply to King Hezekiah because Hezekiah was never called Immanuel and did not establish an eternal kingdom. Justin insisted that the miraculous sign required an unprecedented event, a virgin giving birth. Trypho answered with the Hebrew text. He argued that the passage spoke of an ordinary young woman in the court of Ahaz, and that applying it to Jesus was an imported Greek mythological concept that distorted the Hebrew scriptures. Centuries later, during the Middle Ages, Jewish commentators like Rashi and Ibn Ezra reaffirmed this defense. They demonstrated that biblical prophecy always operated through historical grammar, refusing to let exilic passages be severed from their original 8th century setting.
When we step back from the debate, we discover that both traditions are operating with internal consistency. Judaism reads Isaiah 7:14 through the lens of historical grammar, pshat, insisting that a prophetic sign must function within the immediate crisis of the author and his original audience. Christianity reads Isaiah 7:14 through the lens of typological revelation, believing that God layered sacred history with prophetic patterns that pointed forward to the incarnation. Neither side is reading in bad faith. They simply bring two different hermeneutical rules to the same sacred text. Now, we turn the investigation to you. When examining ancient prophetic texts like Isaiah 7:14, should a prophecy be understood strictly within its immediate historical crisis, or does Scripture allow for a greater typological fulfillment centuries later. Share your analysis in the comments below. And to explore how another major prophetic text divided the biblical world, click the video on screen right now as we investigate Jeremiah 31 and the promise of the New Covenant.